Good afternoon, everyone. So welcome back to this session where I'll be teaching us Management Accounting 2. So in our last class, we talked about high or low method. We also talked about limiting factor, where we solved a couple of questions there. So if you're here to see those videos, I encourage you to go and see those videos because the questions that were solved there, they are very, very examinable. So in today's class, we are going to be looking at learning curve. All right, so once again, my name is Emmanuel. All right, we're going to be looking at learning curve. So when we talk about learning curve, what exactly are we trying to see? So learning curve is a combination of two words, learning and curve. All right, learning, of course, is a process of gaining skills, knowledge, and etc. So curve is just like a movement of a trend or from one point to another. All right, so now looking at it now under this course, Management Accounting 2, may I tell you that this is a topic that you cannot escape in the exam. So it is advisable that you pay close attention to this topic. So when we say learning curve, what are we talking about? I'm going to give us the meaning, the explanation, the advantages, and the conditions under which learning curve theory can operate before we now go into the solving of illustrations. Now, learning curve is a process by which an individual acquires skills, knowledge, and ability. Is a process by which an individual acquires skills, knowledge, and what ability. When a new product or process is started, performance of workers is not at its best, and the learning phenomenon takes place. Right? When a new process is being introduced, for example, we have been making meat pie, and all of a sudden, a new product such as sandwich was being introduced, and we had not done it before. We had not produced such kind of product before. Now, you see, the productivity of the workers at that point in time, at that earlier stage, will not be at its best. Why? Because there is a new product, there is a new process, and because of that new product and process, you don't expect the productivity of the workers to be at its best for that new product. So what now happens? It means that learning has to take place, right? Learning has to what? Take place. So as learning keeps taking place, it keeps taking place. Now, what now happens? As the experience is gained, right, performance of workers improve, time taken per unit reduces, and thus its productivity goes up, right? So the productivity is due to the learning effect that has taken place. All right, so learning curve is that process by which individuals, workers, all right, gain new skills, knowledge, and ability in the process of carrying out their day-to-day activity, or when a new product or process is being introduced. I'm going to give you another illustration relating to the family. Now, as a young child that was given birth to, when the child is 3 years, you try your best to begin to teach the child on how to bathe. All right? At first, you be the one that bathe the child. You tell the child, hold the bucket, stand up, close your eyes, don't open it. After some time, you say you want to give it a try today. My child is 5 years. My child should be able to bathe his or herself, right? Now, you now give a child a go ahead to bathe. Don't be surprised that the child might not know when to rub soap or not. You would surely see that there is a remnant of soap on his or her head when he or she finishes bathing, just at the first point. Why? Because it is new. It is new. It is when you now come, you now say, oh, you should have rubbed the soap first. After doing that, you should have used sponge to scrub your body. After doing that, you should have poured water. You should have. Then the child will say, oh, okay, mommy, I'm going to try better next time. Right? So the next time the child goes to take his or her bath, right, you will see that the number of time that it took the child so that I can see you clear. In the number of time that it took the child to birth the next time will be reduced, right? And the perfection and productivity will increase. This is how it happens in the production process, right? And that is a topic called learning curve. Learning keeps taking place. Learning will keep taking place. And as learning keeps taking place, the number of time it requires to solve a problem keeps reducing. It keeps reducing. Nevertheless, there is a point you would get to. Learning will stop, right? Learning will stop. And at that point, yes, there is nothing like the time being reduced any further. So that is learning curve. Now, learning curve has some advantages. Number one advantage is that the dexterity of workers will improve. It will improve. Their confidence, their assurance will improve. Number two, the initial bottleneck associated with the task will be overcome gradually. At the initial stage, they would encounter some bottlenecks, some back and forth, right? But due to the effect of learning, right, the initial bottleneck associated with the task will be overcome gradually. Another advantage is that the workers become familiar with the problem areas and finds appropriate solutions for them. They become familiar with the problems areas, right? And they begin to find appropriate solutions for them. Those are the advantages of learning curve. There can be more advantages, right? So, but I'm giving you these three as the advantages. Now, there are some conditions under which this learning curve theory can operate. The learning curve cannot just operate like that. No. Imagine the illustration I gave about a child, right? That you took the child the process of birthing his or herself, right? And you made the child to attempt it for the first time. Now, if the next time the child is made to go and try to cook, the child will have to start the cooking process all over again, because the cooking process is different from the bathing process, right? So there are some conditions that should be available before the learning curve theory can take effect. Number one, the task must be repetitive in nature. The task must be what? It must be repetitive in nature. If the task is a one-off task, there won't be learning, because the child or the person or the production manager or the workers would not have the opportunity to redo such task. So it must be what? Repetitive in nature. Number two, there should be little or no labor turnover. When we say labor turnover, what do we mean? The process whereby workers move out of an organization and into another organization. That's labor turnover. There should be little, because now, after the first set of workers have tried a new product, remember that they have gained some level of experience, right? Now, if this set of workers leaves the organization and another set of workers join, they have to start the learning from beginning again. So this condition must be available before we can say that learning curve theory can take effect. So number three is that the task must be continuous without frequent breaks. The task must be what? It must be continuous without frequent breaks. And lastly, the task must be labor intensive. When we say labor intensive, what do we mean? Meaning it should be such that is not being carried out by machines, right? The tasks should be such that are not being carried out by a machine. You can't say that for a machine intensive task you want to start looking at learning curve for workers. No, it must be a labor intensive task, and that way the learning curve theory can take effect. So this is the explanation about learning curve theory. I've talked about the meaning of learning curve. I've talked about the advantages. I've talked about the conditions for which learning curve theory can operate. So after this, now we want to go and look into illustrations. I'm going to be solving two examinable illustrations, right? There are two examinable illustrations that I will be solving. If you're yet to see it, you might need to check on the description and you click the link to watch it. So Alright, but before we solve illustration 1 and illustration 2, there are ways of solving questions on learning curve. Alright, so I'm going to say ways of solving questions on learning curve. Right, so the first one is the algebraic method, and the second one is the tabular method. All right, so the algebraic method and the what and the tabular method. So in the algebraic method, what we just require is this is a formula where a x raised to power minus b. Okay, so now interpreting that now, we can say that y is the expected average time per unit based on expected outputs. We can say where, let's call this, where y is the what expected average time per unit based on expected outputs. Right? A is average time per unit spent on the first batch. Average time right? And x is the index of learning given. Is the index of learning, and the index of learning is what? Is the expected output divided by the number of units in the first batch. X is index of learning. And the index of learning is calculated by expected outputs divided by number of units in the first batch. Units in first batch. Right? So, and the b, how do we calculate this b? Minus b is equal to the log of learning curve percentage divided by the log of 2. Right? So if we are using the algebraic method, this is what we'll be using or utilizing to do what? To solve any given problem. And if we are using the tabular method, in this case, we just have to be drawing table where we'll bring in the first, second, third, fourth batch. We'll calculate the average time or average units needed, and we'll calculate the total time, etc. before we can now begin to determine whatever has been asked in the question. So these are the basic 2 ways that we can use to approach a learning curve question. Now, to illustration 1.